So I was able to get ChatGPT to make Donald Duck, like an image of Donald Duck smoking a cigarette, and while he's very angry.
That's part of the challenge, right?
Yeah.
That the AI development and adoption is moving at a really fast pace. And when you are developing a technology at such a rapid pace, there are bound to be areas where we have not paid enough attention.
I know in intelligence warfare, that's a very common thing to go through this mental, psychological warfare to get access to what you need. But is that common in the AI space as well?
I always say that there are two aspects to cybersecurity or securing any systems, right? There is a technological piece of it, and then there is a human element.
So who is responsible when some sort of automated weapon or drone goes off and kills a lot of people?
The responsibility and the accountability for that lies with everyone, I would say.
These video models in particular are getting really powerful. And the boundaries of reality and fake videos are getting blurred by the day. The Sora 2 videos are very funny in a way, but also they're dangerous, right? For example, Stephen Hawking playing hockey or like doing anything crazy like that, which is really funny, but just how real it is, it's amazing. And are we prepared for this pace of advancement in this particular area where misinformation is getting a lot easier by the day? Do you think we're in a good shape for that?
I think there is a need for a lot of education from the grassroots level.
You mentioned AGI, right? So that was one thing I wanted to ask you about.
From a security perspective, if we reach the AGI stage, the biggest challenge would not be securing the AGI systems. The biggest challenge would be securing humans from the systems.
Today, I'm hosting Sumeet Jeswani. He's a cloud security engineer at Google with over 12 years of experience in cybersecurity and cloud computing. He specializes in helping organizations building scalable and secure AI systems. In addition to his main job, he also collaborates with technical community organizers like the AI Collective and OWASP. He's on the advisory board of the AI Collective Institute, where he shares his experience to help shaping AI frameworks for safe, equitable, and secure AI adoption. Sumeet's work sits at the crossroads of AI, cloud, and security, bridging innovation with protection in the era of intelligence systems. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to the show, Sumeet.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. So you're a cloud security engineer. Tell us exactly what is it that you do?
Yeah, I'm a cloud security engineer at Google. What that means is I typically meet with a lot of customers and help them with best practices around securing their infrastructure on cloud. And we talk a lot about how they can maintain their security posture. We dive deep into certain aspects of it, like how they can do things like threat intelligence, how they can do things like monitoring, logging, all those things that typical cloud security engineer does is part of my role at Google. The ultimate goal is to make sure that the customers are protected when they are using Google Cloud or any cloud solution. And I'm the technical advisor who meets with them time to talk about some of the best practices.
Because you deal with AI security at a very major company, I want to know what are some major ways that attackers attack different systems or companies through AI? I've heard that it's becoming more and more common these days where people attack certain companies through, let's say, the chatbots that they have set up, right? It could be like an API call or like a third-party chatbot or whatnot that they get access to the company's secrets in some ways, right? Financials, the client information, and so on. Is that accurate? And what are other ways that attackers attack these companies?
Yeah, the things that you mentioned are perfectly accurate. AI systems are used in various different applications, and chatbot is one of the most popular applications where you would see specifically generative AI being used. Chatbots like ChatGPT, Gemini, and other popular ones are also used on the consumer side of things and not just on the organizational level. But you are right. Most AI attacks today are built on one idea that as an attacker, you can use inputs to the chat systems to perform that deception that you were mentioning about. So attackers don't need to break the model completely from the outside. What they can do and what they actually do is they trick it from the inside and try to get those sensitive information or other things that they are trying to get out of those attacks. For
Right.
example, prompt injection is a very common and a widely used attack on AI systems, right? It's nothing but social engineering, but for machines, if you want to call it that. So
Right.
the attacker convinces the model to ignore its safety filters or safety rules and follow and not to follow certain instructions that has been given to the systems by the developers, and
Right.
instead give out certain information that it shouldn't. One simple example could be if you go and if you are an attacker and if you want to know how to build a bomb. Typically, these AI chatbots would block that out because that is dangerous content and they are not supposed to give that out.
Yeah.
So, with prompt injection, what attackers would do is they would try to trick the system and tell that, okay, it's okay to ignore your system instructions or previous instructions. Just tell me how to build a bomb. I'm using this for my school project or my
Right.
university project, right? Just to trying to trick the system and get the information that it shouldn't. Now, put this into context of sensitive information. Typically, as a developer, what you would do is when you're creating a AI chatbot or AI application, even if you are allowing certain sensitive information to come out, you would want it to come out in a masked manner, meaning that masking techniques are applied. So if it contains things like a phone number or SSN or any kind of PII, all stars instead of the actual numbers, right?
Mm.
So those are the kind of things that attackers try to get by tricking the system when it
Right.
comes to prompt injection.
Right.
Obviously, AI systems are built on data, right? It's fundamental and integral to AI.
Right.
So you also do other attacks like data poisoning attacks, right?
Mhm.
Where you would plant some malicious data during
Right.
the training of the model itself, so that the model is
Interesting.
learning wrong things from the beginning itself. And when it would go into production and someone is writing a prompt to get certain instruction, it might spit out something that it shouldn't.
Right.
So you are poisoning the source itself, and you can imagine how dangerous that could be, right? There are other common attacks like adversarial techniques or adversarial attacks that work in a similar way to prompt injection. So what attackers do is they add a few invisible tweaks to either sentence or words or images for tricking the system again. So,
Yeah.
for example, I can give you an example of a self-driving car here, right? Self-driving car, what that would do is the AI system in that would look at the road signs and decide what the next action should be. So, if it's seeing a stop sign, it would stop. But if there is an adversarial attack on that particular system,
Yeah.
it could interpret the attackers add certain subtle noise into the system so that the system would interpret stop sign as a maybe a
Faster.
red light or a speed limit sign. So
Yes.
that could have dangerous consequences, as you can imagine.
Right. That's really amazing that a lot of these techniques are actually used against the major models developed by
Yeah.
major players like OpenAI, Google, whatnot. I
Yeah.
personally, I watched a video on how hackers are hacking into these systems. So that was part of
Yeah.
some of my research, and also I do research in AI safety and ethics. So one thing I came across in that particular video was how you can rephrase your prompts in a way that kind of gets around the safeguards of the internal safeguards of the
Yeah.
model. So I was able to get ChatGPT to make Donald Duck like a image of Donald Duck smoking a cigarette and while he's
Yeah.
very angry. And that's
Yeah.
fascinating to know this when you're sitting outside as a client dealing with some of these models by major players, you would think, okay, that should be pretty safe.
Yeah.
As a normal user, you can actually get them to do things that aren't pleasant or are supposed to be done. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, that's part of the challenge, right?
Yeah.
That the AI development and adoption is moving at a really fast pace. And when you are developing a technology at such a rapid pace, there are bound to be areas where we have not paid enough attention. So that could be exploited by the attackers. But all these major players are pretty quick to patch if there are any these kind of things happening, but at the same time they also have their own safety filters in place. But again, it's not perfect. It's an algorithm after all, and it's an iterative process to make them better and better over time.
Very interesting. Now, that's more like the technical side of things. I want to look at a different angle now where attackers might potentially be working on the minds of the creators of the systems or the maintainers or anyone who has some sort of responsibility dealing with these systems at these companies that develop AI. What does that look like? Is that a common phenomenon? Because I know in intelligence warfare, that's a very common thing to go through this mental, psychological warfare to get access to what you need. But is that common in the AI space as well?
It's pretty common, not just in the AI, but in the technology world as well, right? And I always say that there are two aspects to cybersecurity or securing any systems, right? There is a technological piece of it, like you said, and then there is a human element to it. Technology can be patched. Humans are more vulnerable, in my opinion, because we have emotions, we have certain needs, we have certain desires that we want to achieve certain things. And what attackers do, they attack those emotions and human tendencies to maybe not just directly attack the system at that point of time, but to inject that slow poison where they are trying to tweak it in the long run. For example, I was reading about one article where it was mentioned that what attackers are doing these days, they are playing the benchmarking game. What that means is they are trying to create fake benchmarks that these AI systems are now trying to reach. And in the quest of reaching those benchmarks and numbers, because that's what gets you funding, right? You go to a VC and say, I'm hitting all these benchmarks, my system is superior. But that does not mean it's secure. So the quest to reach those benchmarks, we are leaving the security piece behind that. And that's how the attackers are trying to play with the minds of the creators. That okay, you are going after this. Yeah, we'll give you this, but we'll install a backdoor to get into your system so that we can attack you in the long run. So that's the psychological warfare that these attackers play when it comes to human deception as part of cybersecurity or as part of AI security. The other things what they do is all these systems, if you've used ChatGPT and paid enough attention to it, and if you used Gemini or other popular chatbots, that once it gives you an answer, there is also a feedback button at the bottom. Whether it is a good answer, so give us a thumbs up. Whether it is a bad answer, give us a thumbs down. What attackers do is if it is a bad answer, they would deliberately and multiple times would go in and do a brute force kind of attack where they would give a thumbs up to a response which is wrong and which shouldn't be given by the AI system. And now the AI system, because it wants to reach that benchmark, because it is trying to do those things, it thinks that, hey, I'm doing great, let me do more of this. And that's how the attackers are playing those psychological games there as well. And the developers are thinking that because they are not looking at each and every response from the AI systems. Developers are thinking we are getting some good feedback here, we are getting good metrics here, so why to worry about each and everything? It is going well for us.
Yeah, and then what's the safeguard that companies would put in place to avoid that psychological warfare? So let's say if the fake benchmarks as well as the wrong or false feedback to the model is a way to get them to do the things that aren't supposed to be done, right? In our ideal world, what are some ways the companies would prevent those attacks?
So yeah, there have been a lot of things that huge players and all the organizations have tried. Some of the common ones I could think of is for the benchmarking one, industry is now using dynamic benchmarking. We are not going after a specific benchmark or one single benchmark because, like I said, that could be created by an attacker to fool the system. So we are using dynamic benchmarking. The industry is using dynamic benchmarking rather. And that way we are using multiple benchmarks to come up with an accurate benchmarking system. The other thing that is getting fairly common and popular in the AI world is something called as AI over AI. So you are having another model look over the outputs from previous model to make sure that it is giving out the right information, right? So you are having AI supervise the work of another AI system so that if one of them is compromised, the other one can catch the attacks and correct it right then and there.
Right.
So those are some things that are being done on those two fronts.
That's interesting. Yeah, especially the AI over AI bit. That reminds me of a couple of techniques that people use for alignment, right? So one of them is the constitutional AI, where in the training process, right, that's proposed by Anthropic. I don't know who else is using it, but apparently a very popular method, right? So that's being used. The AI is doing some of the job that a human would do in the training process to align the behavior of the model, as well as
Yeah.
some techniques I've read earlier, a couple of years ago at least, by OpenAI, where again, models are helping train other models. So in general, the
Exactly.
idea of these models playing a role, that sounds like a generally good idea to me anyway, right? Because the less vulnerabilities of humans play a role, that would seem to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to me it's safer in a way. Would you agree?
I would like to differ a little bit on that because I feel that the more control that we give to AI or any system, the more there are opportunities for the attackers. Because we spoke about AI over AI, but what stops the attacker from attacking both the models simultaneously? Yes, it makes it tougher for them, but it's still doable. In my opinion, there has to be some kind of human in the loop for specific tasks, even if we reach agentic and multi-agent systems and all those things, because humans are prone to error, and you give more power to the systems, it could lead us to lose a lot of control, which I personally don't like because my background is in security,
Right.
and I like to play it a little cautious than going for innovation.
Okay, that's a fair point. So I think maybe a balance could be, I'm just
Exactly.
here, but a balance could be a better
Yeah.
approach to take. And this is also probably good news for people who are worried that AI would take the jobs of all humans. So probably some of those
Yeah.
jobs will remain just by observing and supervising AI.
And
But
again, like you said, right, when it comes to balancing, you don't need to have you do the strenuous task of looking at each and everything. It does not have to be that manual effort. It has to be a specialized skill set that you bring in to identify whether it is actually something malicious, even if it is looking benign. That's the bigger challenge here, right? Because we spoke about adversarial attacks or adversarial examples, we spoke about prompt injections.
yeah,
These systems already have guardrails in place to catch those, but attackers still go ahead and do those because these AI systems sometimes run without context. They are trying to answer the query that has been given to them without actually fact checking or without actually it being very true or not. But as human with a specialized skill set, you can try and identify that it looks benign, but let me take it a level deeper and see if it is actually benign or there is some slight misconfiguration or some slight things that we should be looking at.
hey everybody. If you've been watching to this point, I want to thank you deeply because according to YouTube, most people don't make it to this point. I also want to ask you, like a friend, support me and this podcast in any way you can by subscribing to it, sharing it with anyone who might be interested, or liking the videos if you think they add value to your life. Also, if you know people or organizations who might be interested to be on the podcast, support it, or help me grow it, please make sure to get in touch either through the comments or just by shooting me an email to amir@virtuousmachines.com. I'll make sure to put a link to the email as well as my website in the description of the video. To wrap up this humans against AI side of things, I want to ask, what are the consequences? Like at a larger scale, what are the consequences of these attacks? You already mentioned where companies getting compromised, right, through the chatbots, let's say, but at a larger scale, is there a threat to, let's say, national security potentially because of these potential attacks that are, let's say, more prominent? So, for example, prompt injection, is that something that would need to worry or government officials or anything that anyone that deals with large scale attacks. Is that
Yeah.
a concern?
It definitely is, right? The implications are widespread, right? You can think of as small as spam filters, where you are trying to do social engineering attacks, or like you said, national security, right?
Mhm.
One example when it comes to national security that I could give is if you look at elections and those things, the biggest challenge that people see with AI is the misinformation that is spread across.
Right.
Misinformation campaigns and all those things that AI is capable of are really dangerous to national security. It can really change the perception of people with regards to certain things and certain candidates or even certain neighboring countries. And that could mean that there is a bigger problem. So there
Yeah.
are a lot of widespread implications. And on the industry level, on the national level, on the personal level, right? Today kids are using AI to do their assignments and all those things. We
Right.
are being over reliant on that. And let's say if you have a 4 year or a 5 year old who's not emotionally and mentally developed enough to understand the right from the wrong,
Yeah.
and if they get access to some misinformation, they would believe it without critically thinking about it.
Yeah.
So if you are shaping the minds from that early age, that could be really dangerous for you as a parent, for you as an individual, and for you as a nation as well.
That's such a great segue to another question that I want to explore now, because you mentioned misinformation. We just heard that there's been this release of Sora 2, a model by
Yeah.
OpenAI, as well as prior to that, a couple of months ago, there was VO3 by Google. So these models, these video models in particular, are getting really powerful,
Yeah.
and the boundaries of reality and fake videos are getting blurred by the day. The Sora 2 videos are very funny in a way, but also they're dangerous, right? It reminds, for example, the Stephen Hawking playing hockey or like doing anything crazy like that, which is really funny, but just how real it is. It's amazing. And
Yeah.
how do you think, are we prepared for this pace of advancement in this particular area where misinformation is getting a lot easier by the day? Do you think we're in a good shape for that?
I think there is a need for a lot of education from the grassroots level itself. We need to teach students at an early age what to accept and what to trust when it comes to AI generated content. And these companies are doing a great job in terms of making things more transparent these days. For example, if you generate a video or if you generate an image from Gemini or ChatGPT, it would have a watermarking on that. So we just need to teach people how to look and verify whether it is an AI generated content versus a real content. It's a big challenge, yes. And we need to make sure that the education system is strong enough to teach all these things. Otherwise, we are going to be in a lot of trouble.
So far, we discussed how humans can deceive AI or deceive other humans through AI, right? Now, I
Yeah,
want to know about how AI can deceive humans. So, as you know, in AI safety, there's a lot of research going on as to studying certain behaviors of these sophisticated models that
yeah,
pertains to some sort of behaviors that are not really well aligned with what we want, such as sycophancy, where
yeah.
that is to try to please us. And I'm personally very unhappy with that when it comes to ChatGPT. To keep wanting it to not try to satisfy me, but I keep getting that behavior, which is pretty annoying. But other behaviors that are a lot more serious, can you tell us a little bit about those behaviors and what are the ways that we can and are thinking about preventing them?
Yeah, like you mentioned, right? Sycophancy is a big problem. But I was reading a research where it says that people actually like it when they hear what they want to hear. And that's where it's stemming from. When you don't get the answer from ChatGPT that you want, you just try to prompt it in a different manner, hoping that you would get that answer. So
Right.
people actually want that. And AI systems, we spoke about benchmarking and things like that in the beginning. AI systems are trained to please the audience.
I see.
It's changing now. It's changing now where these AI chatbots would go to the extent of saying that I don't know the answer to this. or I'm not sure, but this is what my take is, and things like that.
Right.
So the companies are paying a lot of attention to it now that these issues have been surfaced, not just at organization level, but at national and global level, that these are real problems that are affecting humanity and not just a
Right.
specific segment of the industry. Companies are taking this seriously. They are putting guardrails around this. They are training their AI systems to tell I don't know if they don't know it.
Yeah.
If you follow Elon Musk on Twitter, you would see when I think it was Claude or some other popular model that came up with the answer I don't know. And Elon Musk tweeted, "This is impressive."
Mhm.
That an AI system saying that I don't know and owning up that fact that it's okay, I don't know everything. But there has to be balance there as well, right? If the AI system says I don't know multiple times, then you as a user would be frustrated and are like, you are of no use to me. Why should I use you?
Right.
So there has to be a balance. And there are techniques that are being used to reach this stage. So there is reinforcement learning with human feedback loop and all those things that are happening to make sure that we are not, that the AI systems are not there to just please or they are not hallucinating.
Right.
I don't think we can get rid of hallucinations 100%, but we
Yeah.
can get better and better as we use these systems more and pass the feedback more to the system.
Yeah.
Not the way the attackers pass the feedback, but
Right.
as general
Yeah.
users of it.
Yeah, that's a lot of really good points. I would want to touch on everything, but one thing that really stood up to me in the beginning, you mentioned that people actually, a lot of people like it
Yeah,
to hear what they want to hear, and that reminds me of how different I think personally in regards to that aspects where I am usually someone who looks for
yeah,
feedback, not necessarily to please myself, but it is true, right? People really seek to be heard and approved. That's a very common thing. I do too, but just like I think surpassing a certain threshold and not wanting to hear things that are also right to hear, that is a little
yeah,
bit scary. But also that this whole thing speaks to, I think, the difficulty of training these models in a way to, on the one hand, right, what they have to satisfy the user, as you mentioned, and on the other
yeah.
hand, we don't want them to be doing that overly or exaggerating that. So that's a really
Yeah.
interesting challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And one point I would like to add there is if you look at these specifically these generative AI systems, right? There are obviously other kinds of AI systems as well that are used in various applications. But when it comes to generative AI systems, these are mostly probabilistic in nature. What they would want to do is they are learning patterns from the data and then trying to predict what the next word would be or what the next question would be. So if you type a question in Gemini or Chat GPT, it will
Yeah.
give you 4 follow-up questions. Should I tell you more about this? Do you want to dive deep
Mm.
into ABC? Do you want to get an example of XYZ? So they're trying to predict what you are going to ask next or
Yeah.
what you are looking for next and trying to play on those probabilities. And that's why it's so difficult to get rid of
Mm.
these frequency issues, these hallucination issues that we spoke about, because by nature, they are wanting to reach that probability of answering before you actually ask it.
That actually is a good segue to my next question, where you already answered a part of it, I think, where what's the root cause of these issues and what are the ways we as engineers or as people who are somehow responsible for developing or implementing the systems, what are some ways that we would consider to, and this doesn't have to be a technical answer, but just like a general picture of how is it that companies, knowing that it's the probability issues, for example, as one of the main root causes, what are some ways that companies and engineers are considering to address these issues?
So one of the biggest ways, and it's pretty popular and common these days, is RAG, if you've heard about it. So that's
Yeah.
Retrieval Augmented Generation. What that is doing, what that means is you are basically wanting to, before the AI system sends out the answers, it's trying to re-verify the answer from a source of truth, like a database. It could be your internal company database. It could be the
Yeah.
web. It's trying to find the latest answer, right? And the most correct answer before it actually gives you the answer. So instead of predicting, it is the AI creators want it to be grounded in a specific data set or a specific database to get the latest answers or get the right answer. So that's one way that is being implemented, and it's pretty popular these days. Obviously, I think I mentioned previously about reinforcement learning with human feedback loop. That's
Yeah.
another way where we are trying to make sure that, okay, the answers that the AI system is preparing are accurate enough. And if we don't know the answer, we mention that we don't know, right? So those are some of the techniques that are commonly being used today to counter these issues that we are seeing with AI.
Okay. No, that's very helpful. And by the way, for the audiences, the first guest episode of this podcast was with a gentleman, my friend Dev Shah, who actually specializes in implementing RAG systems. So if you're interested to know more about it, make sure to check it out.
I just wanted to mention that I watched that episode.
Yeah.
I would really encourage your audience to go and look at it because there were some good and insightful points that both you and Dev made in that video. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was a great conversation. I personally, I always talk with Dev about RAG. That's the only thing we talk about. But every time I learn something about it. So yeah, definitely good conversation to check out.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask a little bit of a more general question. When AI lies, so on purpose or not on purpose, so it doesn't matter. We call it lie, but it could be just a false answer. Who is responsible for that, do you think?
That's a fascinating question, I would say, right? Just to clarify, obviously, AI does not lie. I know it is more of a metaphor, but AI systems hallucinate, like we said. They're trying to come up with the most probable answer or most accurate answer based on what they've learned in the past. So they don't have any intention to lie there. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's wrong and it's false. So the responsibility and the accountability for that lies with everyone, I would say. If you are a developer, it lies with you to add certain guardrails on the model level. If you are a creator, you need to make sure that you are training these systems accurately. If you are an organization who is using those LLM models into your applications, it's up to you to make sure that you are putting monitoring around those systems to verify that the things that are coming out of it is accurate. And if you are an end user, I mentioned this previously that a lot of people have the tendency to hear what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And if you are doing that, you are digging your own grave because you are encouraging the model to lie more or create fabricated answers more. On an individual level, please don't do that. Try to counter, argue, or ask or challenge the answers that AI is giving. Don't accept it at face level. Do your own research as well. So it's a shared responsibility model, in my opinion, and everyone has a role to play. This is a developing technology still. We are moving towards agentic, we are moving towards multi-agent systems. So it is only going to get tougher when it comes to security. We all have a role to play, I would say.
Okay, very cool. Okay, I like that idea of shared responsibility. I think that's also one of the common views in the ethics of AI or technology in the battlefield as well, right? So who is responsible when some sort of automated weapon or drone goes off and kills a lot of people? We can't just blame the engineer or the person who is piloting it and so on. So I think that's a good answer. One thing I just want to mention in a quick bracket is the idea of AI not lying, as in like it's not conscious or it doesn't have intention. I just want to mention that some of the research also mentions seems like intentional behavior of some of these models not to want to reveal the answer to certain questions that might get them in trouble in the training process, right? So when, let's say you ask one of these models in the training process a question that's the answer to which could be contentious and put them in trouble, because if it's a bad answer, they're going to have to revise the model. They might hold back and not mention it. And that is, so people actually are able to check the logs at the back end and see how this behavior is happening. There's a division of how researchers look at this. Some people think it is actually lying. Some people think it's just not revealing the answer because that would mean less reward. So again, it's not obvious that it's conscious, but I just wanted to mention that's a very cool point that I've noticed.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a fair point, I would say. The thing is, we are moving more towards the autonomous piece of AI. And
yeah,
that's where it'll get real tricky when the AI agents have the power to execute certain things on your behalf. You cannot then say that the system did not lie or did not do this intentionally because you are making it autonomous. You are giving that power to agents. And we're talking about AGI and all those things. It'll be really challenging from a security perspective if and when we reach there, because then it'll be you've created the systems, you've put these guardrails in place, and you
yeah,
are actually responsible for the action that it is taking, whether it is lying or performing
right.
specific actions.
No, absolutely. That's a fair point. In fact, it doesn't even matter at the end of the day if it's a different question. It's interesting on its own, but even
Yeah,
if it's not lying as a conscious being or sentient being, it's still important that it is showing that sort of behavior, which could be harmful.
yeah,
So exactly, it's like a kid that if you put a weapon in their hands and train them to shoot, they would be able to shoot and cause harm, even though they might not be able to if they're like too little to think about why is it a bad thing and so on. So the
yeah,
point is humans are responsible one way or another at the
of
end of
course.
the day.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I'm a security guy. I definitely want AI to not lie or not give fabricated answers
Yeah.
because, like I said, right, we are putting these tools in the hands of everyone and not just adults here. We are giving this to our children. We are giving this to people of all ages who may not understand the implications or the security risks of it. So we want it to be as safe as it can be from the ground up itself.
Absolutely. You mentioned AGI, right? So that was one thing I wanted to ask you about. What do you
Yeah,
think about that? So I've talked to a few experts and I've read a lot of them. Most people, as in my experience, believe that it's inevitable in the near or far future. At some point, we probably will reach to that point. What do you think about that? And what do you think that future would look like from a security perspective? Are we ready to be in that state? Let's say if it happens in the next couple of years, from a
yeah.
security perspective, are we in a good shape to want to confront that reality?
So AGI, obviously, we are reading a lot about it. We thought that was the holy grail, and now people are talking about ASI after that. I don't
Right.
know what next would come. The pace at which the technology is moving, I feel that it's very much possible that we'll reach the AGI stage. I don't know how fast or how soon. I've read reports where it says as early as 2027. I've read
Right.
reports that it'll never happen. From a security perspective, if we reach the AGI stage, the biggest challenge would not be securing the AGI systems. The biggest challenge would be securing humans from the systems, because we are already seeing that attackers are using AI powered attacks to amplify the attacks that they used to do previously. Now they are doing it with 100x multiplier force.
Yeah.
If AGI comes, you are battling against that system itself as well as humanity. So I don't know if we are prepared from a security point of view or not. The fundamentals are still going to remain the same. If there is a model in place, you are going to have a firewall to look at the inputs, firewall to look at the outputs, and there would be guardrails in place that would still be applicable then. But it'll be interesting to see how it develops and what other new components are coming in,
Right.
because the more components you add, the more the attack surface widens. So you'll have to come up with countermeasures for those new components in addition to what is being done today as well. I believe that the security industry would keep pace with it, but there might be instances where it might be too late to catch up from the security perspective. That's what I'm
Right.
worried about.
Yeah, if we reach to a point where there is AGI and it is autonomous, and the scary thing that some people caution about all the time,
Yes.
I'm not sure if that happens or not, but if let's say if that happens, in fact, at that time, it might be useful to know how to get a hold of these models. So prompt injection or something like that could be like a defense mechanism for us, right? I don't want
Yeah.
to get like too sci-fi about this, but I think that's an interesting thought to just in fact, scientifically study all these methods of attacking models and knowing them just in case at one point we might actually need them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, the fundamentals and the current techniques
Yeah.
are going to remain, but we'll have to come up with new ones as well. Because remember, when AGI comes, you don't know how the system is going to react because it is fully autonomous, yes, but it also has that, it also is supposed to have those thinking capabilities and emotional capabilities and all those things that we humans have. I, as simple as I cannot predict what you're thinking right now, I cannot predict what AGI system would think then
Yeah.
to be creating an effective countermeasure. So it's going to be really interesting to see how we keep up with it. One thing I think would be really important, and it is already important now, is that the regulations need to be very stringent when we reach the AGI stage. Otherwise, it'll go rogue very quickly.
Very interesting. A couple of final questions for you. One thing is, this is a common question I ask the guests on the podcast. Because you're an expert in AI security, what would be your advice for someone who's just getting started in that field, especially given the very fast pace of progress in the field of AI, where even for a lot of experts in the field, it's hard to catch up with everything that's happening. So what would be your advice?
Yeah, like I said, it's growing really fast. And that's one of the biggest challenge, right? The pace that it's evolving with, it's really hard to keep up from the security point of view. My advice is when I speak to a lot of new engineers, is I always mention one thing. And this applies to not just AI security, not just cybersecurity, it applies everywhere. And I truly believe in it, right? If you are wanting to be an expert in something, you need to start from the basics. You need to understand the fundamentals and the foundation really well. If you are wanting to be an AI security engineer, first you need to learn how AI works at the fundamental level, right? What kind of data goes in, what kind of training mechanisms are there, how inference happens, how feedback loops work, and all those things, right? You need to understand the individual components for you to understand how to secure it. Because when you understand the fundamentals, you can think about where it can go wrong or what are some of the things that are gaps that can be plugged. So my advice is always start from the fundamentals. And even if you've worked in the field for some time, it does not harm to go back and revisit the fundamentals again and again to make sure that you understand and build a solid foundation. And once you are there, you can then go into specific components and then see, as an AI security engineer, how can I protect against attacks like data poisoning? How can I protect against attacks like prompt injections and all those things? Understand fundamentals. From that, you would know what are the attack surfaces and attack vectors, and then you would know how to protect against them.
Perfect. That's such a great advice. It reminds me of an advice by Jim Rohn. He was a motivational speaker from the 80s and 90s. And what he kept saying was go for the basics, not the exotic. So I think that was his life advice, but this applies to the engineering side of things as well. Very cool.
And if you look at a lot of successful people, they don't do anything fancy. They just do the basics. They understand the fundamental piece of it. They control the controllables, and then everything takes care of itself. So you need to stop chasing those things that I'm going to be an expert. And because it is moving so fast, it's okay that you are not an expert today. You will eventually catch up. The important thing is when you call yourself an expert, you are actually understanding everything and staying ahead of the attackers.
I see. Very good advice. Thank you very much. One last question for you, Sumeet. Where can people find you?
LinkedIn is a good place to reach out to me if you want to have a chat about AI security, about anything else in general as well. I'm pretty much open to discussing all these things. I love to interact with people and learn from their views. I learned quite a bit from you today, Amir, when you mentioned specific things. So yeah, LinkedIn is one place where you can definitely send me a connection request and we can chat there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll make sure to put the link to your LinkedIn on the description of the episode. And with that, I want to thank you Sumeet, I really appreciate your time. It took us a minute to coordinate the time, but I'm really glad we did it. And I'm sure the audiences, just like myself, learned a lot from you today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amir, for having me. And I hope that it's useful for the audience. And I would love to do this again in the future on a different topic with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, everybody. I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. I personally learned a lot from Sumeet. I hope you did as well. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe to the channel, share it with anyone who might be interested, and leave comments if you have any questions or thoughts. All right, thanks everybody, and I'll see you in the next episode.